Okay, well, today I'm going to talk about 3 books that are going to depress you, they're going to make you question your existence, and they're also going to be tied in with supernatural horror. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first book we're going to discuss briefly is The Conspiracy Against the Human Race by Thomas Ligotti. Okay, this is probably one of the heaviest books I've ever read. This is horror writer Thomas Ligotti's first nonfiction work, where he discusses supernatural horror and horror literature in general, and how it relates to a pessimistic worldview, an anti-natalist worldview, where you don't want, pretty much where the human race is pointless. Now, this book is one of the hardest books I've ever read. Pretty much, it makes you, well, if you're subject to being influenced by the work you're reading, this will depress the hell out of you. I pretty much felt like I was going to die while reading this. I felt like I wanted to die because there was no point to anything. But this is a wonderful, wonderful book. And it is almost an experience to go through reading this. What I would suggest is that you go into this maybe reading some of his fiction first, so you can sort of see where he plays from. He does a lot of weird stories similar to H.P. Lovecraft. He's compared to a lot, but this is definitely a lot darker than H.P. Lovecraft, and a lot more poetic than H.P. Lovecraft, even despite Lovecraft's poetry. But yes, I highly recommend this. One thing about Conspiracy Against the Human Race, this book was also a huge influence on the writer who wrote the True Detective television series, the season 1 of that. In fact, several lines are cribbed directly from this into that TV series. The Rustin Cole character is pretty much like living this life, which is pretty depressing. But yes, it's if you haven't seen True Detective Season 1, I highly recommend that. If you like folk horror, you want to be depressed, you like good cop shows, that's definitely a good one as well. Next book I want to talk about briefly is Eugene Thacker's In the Dust of This Planet, and this is his Horror Philosophy Volume 1. Now this one, again, is pretty much about existential horror and how it ties into philosophy and how these relate. This is definitely a kindred book along the lines of Conspiracy of the Human Race. I did enjoy this one as well. He's got a very strong voice. This book itself is very, not as dark as The Conspiracy, but is also tied into that pessimistic worldview of how horror can tell the stories of that. And it is, again, it's pretty heavy stuff. If I had read this before Conspiracy, I might have been able to handle Conspiracy better, but I don't want to compare the two directly, but they're tied into the same world. Highly recommend this book. And lastly, I want to talk about, I'm probably going to pronounce it incorrectly, E.M. Koiren, if you can pronounce that properly, The Trouble with Being Born. Now, I heard this one was actually recommended because it's mentioned several times in both of these books. He's one of the sort of forebears of the pessimistic anti-natalist worldview that definitely influenced these other authors in their work. In fact, this one actually has an introduction by Eugene Thacker, which I didn't know at the time, but he's connected to that world. I'm just going to read you a random thing from the book, and we'll read that and so you get a feeling for it. To walk along a stream, to pass, to flow with the water, without effort, without haste, while death continues in its ruminations, its uninterrupted soliloquy. Okay, that's it for the day. These are just three books I wanted to talk about. Let me know if you've read any of these. If you like Tom Sagatti, if you've read his work or any of these other authors, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. And I guess that's it. Have yourself a good rest of your week. Bye.